No one wants to talk about that right now. And I know why. Listen, I know the man that Shedeur Sanders is. I know the man that Deion Sanders is. I have a great relationship with them. This is not about Shedeur's talent because, as I've stated before, he should have been a first-round pick. That's what his tape said, regardless of the name on the back of his jersey. But the reality of the situation is they are setting him up to fail.
We're now tuned in to the Dark Times channel.
And so here we go again, back with another one. Welcome back to the Dark Times channel. And I want to talk about Shedeur Sanders in particular on this video because RG3 came out and said something that I absolutely agree with, and not a lot of people are saying, but he's absolutely right when he's talking about this. And I haven't always seen eye to eye with RG3 in the past, especially for some of the off-putting remarks that he's made. But nevertheless, I'm not going to throw out the baby with the bathwater. And on this particular topic in particular, there's probably no one more qualified to speak on this situation than RG3.
A lot of people think that this confident young man needs to be humbled. There is no better way for someone to try to humble somebody by having them not make an NFL roster and make it as hard as possible for them to make that NFL roster. I don't think that's right.
And either they're afraid of Deion, Deion's got them in his back pocket. They bought into the hype, also possibly. But this is all a Deion creation, right? Well, and look, Shedeur showed you even throughout this process, like a lot of kids his age, not just him, that there's an out of control ego, that he's calling himself legendary. Even when he got prank called, right, by the kid, Jax Olbrich, right? Olbrich, the defensive coordinator of the Falcons now, former Jet defensive coordinator, by his son Jax. He says when he thinks he's talking to Mickey Loomis, I've been waiting for you. Like, where the hell have you been? Yeah. Like, he wasn't contrite.
Now that's an interesting choice of words. Contrite, feeling or expressing remorse and affected by guilt. What does Shedeur Sanders need to feel contrite about or feel guilty about? So he didn't do so well in some interviews, allegedly. He rubbed some people the wrong way by his perceived arrogance, allegedly. That's nothing to feel contrite about. You are who you are. There's a lot of people that come across as arrogant. There's a lot of people that come across as arrogant, and they're also good in their respective fields. But if they can get the job done, they can get the job done.
He wasn't grateful. He wasn't thankful. He was like, what the hell took you so long? Like that's real. And and then the big party in Dallas afterwards with a bunch of rappers, which is great, celebrate being picked. But now it comes down to whether we were right, whether we were wrong, it don't matter. He's now in an NFL camp. And his daddy doesn't get to go with him, and his brother doesn't get to go and document all of it for him.
If I've ever heard somebody that was drunk, this is what it sounds like. But they say a drunk man doesn't tell any lies. And you can tell by his energy exactly where he stands with the Sanders family. He sounds like one of those people that couldn't wait to see Shedeur Sanders and Deion Sanders humbled and put in their place.
Now he's one of about 80 guys, right?
Yeah.
That'll be there until they start weeding down to 53. If he can play, he'll get a chance to play. If he can't, he won't. It's that simple.
All he's got to do is go in there and beat out these four other guys. That's all he's got to do. But listen to RG3 break it down and see why it's not as simple as a lot of these people are trying to make it.
What do you think of the Cleveland Browns QB situation?
No, it's horrible. It's absolutely terrible situation for a quarterback to be in.
And like I said earlier, there's not a more qualified person to speak on this topic. Nobody would know better than RG3.
Let's get real, people, here. All right? This is the thing that nobody wants to talk about. Shedeur Sanders is in a situation where the NFL and the Cleveland Browns have set him up to sink or swim in year one. What I really mean by that is they set him up to fail. Shedeur Sanders is the fourth quarterback on the Cleveland Browns roster, but let me talk to you about the other guys that they have on the roster. Joe Flacco, the de facto starter that everyone with a football brain believes will be their starting quarterback, barring injury, is a Super Bowl champion and Super Bowl MVP. Yes, I know he's 40 years old, but they just brought him in this offseason before they drafted Shedeur Sanders. The next quarterback, Kenny Pickett. Yes, he's been on 2 other teams, but guess what? The Cleveland Browns traded for him this offseason. That gives you 2 quarterbacks with experience on the roster that you would think this is the de facto starter and the de facto backup. But not only that, they didn't just bring in Joe Flacco, the Super Bowl champ and Super Bowl MVP. They didn't just trade for Kenny Pickett. They also drafted a quarterback in the 3rd round by the name of Dillon Gabriel. Now, Dillon Gabriel is one of the most electrifying and most stat-driven quarterbacks in all of college football history. I believe he has the most starts of any college quarterback ever. And it's because he played 6 years of college football. When you went to UCF, played at Oklahoma, and also was at Oregon. They drafted Dillon Gabriel in the 3rd round of the same draft that they took Shedeur Sanders. So no one wants to talk about this because it's a very difficult topic. Shedeur Sanders is a 5th round pick. Guys that are drafted in the 5th round typically don't make NFL rosters. And if they do make NFL rosters, it was because they showed their absolute talent in the preseason and all through training camp and the offseason. But here's the difference. Most of those guys weren't quarterbacks.
Well, Tom Brady, he only got to play because of injury.
So Tom Brady gets his first career start in the National Football League from the 28-yard line. And Brady back to pass, and he's sacked on the first play of the game.
And then when he did come in, he wasn't expected to throw the ball 30 and 40 times a game. Tom Brady was throwing the ball 20 times a game and had a great defense behind him, and he had time to develop as a quarterback. It's a different time and it's a different age in football. Quarterbacks are expected to come in and they're expected to have command of the offense, and they're expected to throw the ball 30 or 40 times a game. And so it's completely different.
Shedeur Sanders is at a position at quarterback where only one guy gets to play. If you're a 5th round receiver, you got a chance to make the team. You just got to go out there and show out. And a lot of times you're going to get opportunities with the 1s and the 2s because of injuries, hamstrings, ankles, those type of soft tissue injuries that pop up. But at quarterback, that typically doesn't happen. So for Shedeur Sanders, you have to understand that this guy is going to be going into the offseason getting the fewest reps of all the quarterbacks on the Cleveland Browns roster. He's going to be going into training camp getting the fewest reps of all the quarterbacks on the Cleveland Browns roster. And then when you go into the preseason, he's going to be getting the fewest reps and the fewest plays of all the quarterbacks on the roster. But let's say he does get some plays. We all know that the preseason, if you didn't know, let me explain to you. The NFL preseason is shorter now, so you only have 3 games. So if Shedeur Sanders is in the game as the 4th quarterback, he's definitely not playing with the number 1 or the number 2s. That's offensive linemen, running backs, wide receivers, everything you can possibly imagine. He's going to be getting protected by guys who are not going to be playing in the NFL, throwing to guys who are probably not going to be playing in the NFL, and handing the football off to running backs that are probably not going to be playing in the NFL. The biggest takeaway there for me is he's going to be relying on guys who will not be playing in the NFL to protect his NFL dream. No one wants to talk about that right now, and I know why. Listen, I know the man that Shedeur Sanders is. I know the man that Deion Sanders is. I have a great relationship with them. This is not about Shedeur's talent because, as I've stated before, he should have been a 1st round pick. That's what his tape said, regardless of the name on the back of his jersey. But the reality of the situation is they are setting him up to fail.
And so a lot of this comes down to, like RG3 said, it comes down to a lot of people not liking Shedeur Sanders for his perceived arrogance and Deion's perceived arrogance, and wanted to put Shedeur Sanders and Deion Sanders in their proverbial place. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. That's what it comes down to. And a lot of people are uncomfortable saying it, but I'm going to say it. because that's the reality of it. There's no reason why Shedeur Sanders shouldn't have gone in the first round. And everyone's pointing to the money that Shedeur Sanders lost by not going in the first round. Yeah, that's part of it. But the number one reason why you want to go in the first round, especially if you're a quarterback, is you get something that's invaluable. You get time. Teams will be way more patient with you if you're taken in the first round, simply because of the money and because of the contract, because of the long-term commitment there. But if you're taken in the 5th round, there is no commitment. And so if you're not showing any signs of promise or any signs of improvement, and it's going to be hard to do that, especially if you're not getting the reps that you're supposed to get. If you're the 4th or the 3rd string quarterback, that's going to be pretty hard to do. They can wash their hands of you. They can cut you, they can trade you, they can do whatever they want, and it's no sweat. It's no sweat to do so because there's no long-term commitment. But I would say the one thing that Shedeur Sanders does have in his favor, he's got a lot of things in his favor, but the one thing that stands out that's in his favor is the response of everybody. It's the response of the fans. Shedeur Sanders right now has the #1 selling jersey in the NFL, and he hasn't even played in his first preseason game. And so that's very telling. And it goes to the psyche of people. Most people love an underdog story, especially if they feel like somebody was wronged and there was an opportunity taken away from them. And not to say that Shedeur Sanders had an opportunity taken away, but he kind of did have an opportunity taken away because Shedeur Sanders earned the opportunity to be a first-round pick, or at the very least, a second-day pick. He earned that opportunity, and his play suggests that he earned that opportunity. And so a lot of people are gravitating towards Shedeur Sanders, and so that's one of the things that he does have in his favor. And so an organization like the Cleveland Browns, that isn't necessarily a widely popular team, has an opportunity to have a quarterback that's very popular. And if he and the Cleveland Browns can turn that popularity into success on the team, well, that's a recipe for a profitable organization, or a more profitable organization. So that's the one thing that he does have in his favor. If the Cleveland Browns and the NFL are indeed about doing good business, then it's in their best interest that Shedeur Sanders does have every opportunity to be successful with the Cleveland Browns. But we're gonna see how it all plays out. I would love to get y'all's thoughts in the comments section below. And make sure, if you haven't done so already, make sure you hit that like button. And if you're not subscribed to the channel and you've been enjoying the content so far on this channel, make sure you go ahead and hit that subscribe button for me as well. And as usual, peace and chaos.